I'm sitting with a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lady. Guys, I mean, she is gorgeous. You are gorgeous, by the way. This Chengeto Mayowe. Now, you're the ambassador of cultural heritage and tourism, and you're an author. You've done so much, so many accolades to your name. Hey, that is very good. So do you want to kind of tell us about, I was reading your bio, and I'm seeing that at the age of 11, you were already interested in all of this. I don't know what I was doing at 11. What grade was I even in? I mean, how did you kind of get into this? How did you know? Was it like a sure path for you?
What happened was, since my father was an ambassador, we traveled a lot.
Okay.
And I always had a love of culture and mythology. But now my dad was like, you can't know about other people's cultures and not your own. Right. Even my mom, with the food that we ate, like, she made sure there's like sadzareji or maguru, derere, all of that stuff, just so that we would always know that you have a home where you come from and it has its own culture.
Yeah.
So now, because I was the youngest, I always had lessons every single weekend on the Zimbabwean history, African history, and the liberation struggle.
This was from your dad?
Yes. And I didn't appreciate it then, but obviously I appreciate it now, because essentially what he used to talk about is what I've now become passionate about.
Okay.
So I also noticed that there's been our culture is very much demonized.
Right.
The moment you mention anything that's not about lobola, it's demonic. It goes against A, B, C, D, E. And yet I'm here and I'm saying, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, because people don't have an understanding really of it.
Yes. So what you don't understand, you demonize.
Yeah. That's it. And you don't appreciate it, and that's what it is. So I mean, some of the stuff, the awards, have you won any awards in your journey and stuff, and because of what you believe in, what you are driving forth?
Yes, there was the one poem awards that were done by Mrs. Mabena, and then there was the Phoenix Awards where I got for my Ngano short story compilation, which is just one of my books, which has 30 short stories. And then in terms of speaking, I've spoken on a TEDx talk. I've spoken at a university in the UK virtually, as well as a primary school in the UK to do with writing, and these kids wanted to know.
You've hosted also on radio?
Yes, like I've been doing the work in bits and pieces.
Yeah, but you are making a name and you are really driving forth something that is really important. Now, this children's book that you are writing, why this book?
Do you know what? It's so funny, because I remember at some point talking to my friend Ben, and he was like, oh, I want to write children's books. And I was like, go for it. That's not my thing. Never do that. This was the beginning of last year. And then by August last year, I had finished 5 short stories.
Oh, wow. For children.
Kids. And I really don't know how it happened. I just knew that, personally for me, there are very few books that had people of color that I read or we had at home growing up.
Children's story-wise. Okay.
We had Aesop's fables, we had things like that, but there was never a book with a child called Chengeto who looked like me.
Right.
Never, right? So I'm doing it in this way of, I've got nieces, I have a nephew, you know, they're my friends' kids that are out there, and I'm like, you deserve to be represented. In books, and hopefully growing it into much more, because you go to airports, there's never, oh, find your name on this keychain. I've never
seen Chengeto
or Rufaro, nothing like that. Not Sarah, even you know, nothing.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things of, I'm just trying to represent the children so that they can read something where they relate.
And they appreciate their culture, like you said.
Exactly. Because sometimes children don't like reading because they can't relate. I can't relate to some gentleman from 1800s in the UK. When I'm from Zimbabwe, I can't relate.
Do you think that sometimes some of this is owing to, okay, so I remember when I was growing up, we had we'd sit, like you're saying, your dad would sit and tell you stories about everything. Do you think that has been diluted, or it's just phased out because of obviously the generation that we are raising, or how the world has just changed?
I think it's a little bit of both. But the funny thing is, a lot of parents in the diaspora are the ones that are actually like, I need books that represent our culture for my children to read. It's as if when people leave, they understand the importance of culture. Because when you're outside there, everybody knows their culture. Then when they turn to you and they're like, so what do? You know nothing but Rora. Like, and that's not good enough. You know, Indians have their things, Japanese have their things, the Greeks have their things.
But what does Zimbabwe have? Nothing much.
Exactly.
Well, Chengeto, coming back to your book, you have this main character called Nyenyedzi.
Yes.
How did you come up with that?
I was just, the thing is when I just start writing,
Okay.
right? So I just started writing, and then just the name Nyenyedzi, because I'm thinking to myself, one of my favorite pastimes was standing outside and looking at the stars with my dad, right? And he would always be like, if you have a problem, we would go outside, just stand there, and then I would start talking after some time.
Okay.
So I've always been partial to stargazing and moon gazing. So I was like, let me just call her Nyenyedzi, because, you know, a star is something you can find, and it can ground you, like it grounds me. So that's why I chose that name, and it's different. It's not one you really hear.
Yeah, not often, hey?
Yes.
And obviously this book, it's in English and it's going to be in other languages. The
Yes.
translating process of it, how has that process been for you?
It was interesting because that technically started last year, but it really kicked into effect in December. Because my thing was that if we're talking inclusion, I can't just do Shona and Ndebele.
Okay.
I have to do the other languages. And I put Shona in quotations because the term Shona, you know, academics like to argue. Some say it came from the Indians, but then there's also a Portuguese guy who just called us Mashona. So I just want us to, I would like to honor the difference between a Karanga and
All
a
right.
Zezuru.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's just a few words in the books. I want to honor that difference because you're an ethnic group called Zezuru for a reason.
Yeah.
You're an ethnic group called Karanga for a
reason.
reason. So I wanted to do inclusion because our children are not stupid, but they grow up perhaps being taught Tonga. And then you go to school and suddenly you're told to, this is English. You know,
That's how you say, yeah, exactly.
they're not stupid.
Yeah.
They're also learning,
Yeah.
you know.
I think it's really good. You know, I was watching something on social media where there was a girl who was saying, in Shona, you guys say this, but in our language, we say it like this. And it's teaching. So I like that aspect of how you are actually teaching
Yes.
through your books
Yes.
as well.
I really wasn't expecting this, to be honest. Children were the last people I was going to
On your
write
mind.
for. But they're also the ones that kept coming to me. Is there, are you going to have, like, literally, I had a few kids, are you going to have a book that I can read? So I was like, I just had to.
No, that's very good. Chengeto, you're doing something incredible. And I think
Thank
this is
you.
the first. It must be the first. 15 countries.
15
languages, I mean,
Yes.
that this book is going to be translated in.
Yes. When I was translating, I wasn't looking for that, right? But then one of my brothers is like, do you understand you've broken a record? You have the most translated book by a Zimbabwean author. And I was like, all I was thinking about was inclusion.
Yes. And that's
what I
good.
was thinking
Sometimes,
about.
and you know, I think that's going to come out in that book when we read it and when the
Yes.
children read it as well.
Yes.
Chengeto, we've run out of time right now.
right.
How do we get a hold of this book? It's being launched in August.
In August,
Okay.
on the 10th of August. That's when it's being launched. So definitely there will be, I will be announcing it as well and just putting it out on papers, on social media. But there is the page for Nyenyedzi, and it's Adventures of Nyenyedzi.
Adventures of Nyenyedzi. This we find on all social media
Yes.
handles. Okay,
Yes.
Adventures of Nyenyedzi.
Yes.
Right. I can't wait to read it.
It's for 0 to 8 years, but... okay.
Yeah, well,
It's allowed.
I'm a child at heart.
Yes, yes.
Yes, we all are children at heart sometimes. Thank you so much, Chengeto,
you.
for gracing us right here on Morning Rush. And you're
you so
doing a
much for
fantastic
having
job, really keeping us up to date with our culture.
Konapo Konapo, Ipapo pa ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.